The ink is drying and the battlefield has settled. We think we know the kings and queens of the current Lorcana meta. We know the win rates, we know the matchups, and we think we've solved the puzzle. But the winds are changing. Winterspell is right around the corner and it threatens to freeze the current strategies in their tracks. Before we dive into the new cards, we have to understand the ground we stand on right now. What decks are dominating? Who is holding the crown? And most importantly, which of these top tier decks will survive the winter? Let's break down the current meta and the deck shares one last time before everything changes. I'm Solaris and this is my first Lorcana video here on Ultimate Guards YouTube, so let's go! And here we are on inkdecks.com, one of the better resources if you want to get to know the Lorcana metagame or specific decklist or recent tournament results or anything you need to know about Lorcana basically. The video will be split into 3 parts. First of all, we will look at the meta matrix from the top 8 deck lists in the current meta, or the top 8 archetypes in the current meta. After that, we will look if the top 8 decks from this database also is represented in real tournaments, and the most recent big tournaments were the Disney Lorcana Challenge in Hong Kong with 443 players and the CCQ in Warsaw with 285 players. And after that we will look at sample decks for the already mentioned archetypes. So let's start over with the matchup matrix here. We start over with the most played deck, which is Amethyst Steel Challenges, which has a whopping 4,800 matches played. It has an overall win rate of 52%, which is very balanced. And if you look at the win rates in the matchups, it looks also very balanced because the win rate spread is between 43 and 70%. I mean, 73% is probably an outlier because this deck is built to beat on aggro decks, which, like Amethyst Emerald, of course, is one of the most degenerate aggro decks in the format. So, of course, the Challenger deck has a very good matchup against this. But overall, it's a very well-suited deck you can play in an open metagame because the win rate doesn't get any lower than 43 or 45% overall. So this is a good choice if you're playing an open tournament where you don't know how the meta is going to be shaped and what to expect from the meta. For example, if Winterspell drops and you don't know how the people are adjusting to the meta, I think the Challenger deck will be a good choice. After that, we have Blurple, or as you all also can say, it's Amethyst Blue Dumbo Evasive, but I prefer Blurple, which has an overall win rate of 55%, which is a little bit higher than Challenges. Also not that many matches played, only 3.5k, but it also has a very evenly spread matchup matrix, except for the aggro deck, which is like the other way around to the Challenges deck, because Blurple is very bad against aggro deck, at least against a very specific and very degenerate aggro deck. It is only a 26% win rate, but other than that, it's very well balanced and it's very well suited to beat on everything, especially when on the play and you find the turn to ramp. Then we have Blue-Green Control, which is actually built to beat on Blurple. But then if you look at it, it only has a 45% win rate against Blurple. And this deck is also pretty bad against aggro decks. I mean, it's not that bad against Amethyst aggro deck because it has a sweeper. Like, for example, maybe even 2 sweepers, depending on if you're playing Prince Philip combo and Under the Sea, or only Under the Sea, or only Prince Philip combo. There are a lot of flavors to blue-green. But it's very bad against Lemon Lime. It only has a 32% win percentage against Lemon Lime, which is the next deck. It is played like roughly 40% of the time the Challenger deck is played. It has a very bad matchup against the Challenger deck. Of course, the Challenger deck is built to beat aggro, which of course Lemon Lime aggro is. But other than that, Lemon Lime aggro has insanely good matchup against a lot of different archetypes, except for the Ruby Amethyst Evasive deck, where it only has a 29% win rate. After that, there's a Ruby Amethyst Evasive deck. My first Lorcana deck ever was Ruby Amethyst, and it's basically, if you're only known to Magic, Ruby Amethyst is basically the Junt of Lorcana. You can say, not in this evasive kind of deck variant, but Ruby Amethyst usually is just playing like Junt, so it also doesn't surprise that the win rate are not that very different over all the metagame. I mean, there's a 38% win rate against Blurple, which is basically the same deck, but has also ramp, so it gets to the more powerful stuff earlier, which means that the matchup is of course bad. But other than that, it's pretty even. We have like Blue Steel ramp, which has a bad matchup, especially against the control deck, but this is not a very, very big part of the meta, so I wouldn't consider that a real thing or notch to not be playing the Blue Steel ramp deck. But it also is not that great against Dumbo, against Lemon Lime aggro, and against the other aggro deck. Then we have the Lantern deck. There are two shapes of aggro, like two flavors of Amber, Amethyst, Lantern. You can play with combo or without. And it really depends. It really makes a difference in the win rate. I mean, you can see here that the win rates are pretty good. Against the top decks, it is very, very good. Mostly even or even better, except for the aggro deck, which is always a problem. It also depends if you're playing the combo or not. But it's getting worse against like the lesser played archetypes, I would say. And the last one I want to talk about is the Emerald Amethyst aggro deck, which is a very degenerate aggro deck. And you can see here in the matchup spread, the win rate spread, that this is it has to be a degenerate deck, because the win rates, I mean, this is only one match played, so 0% is not really that, you don't have to consider that, but the win rate spread is from 10% to 74%, so it really depends on the draws. This is a very volatile deck, but it can also be so explosive, and it can have the most explosive draws in all of Lorcana that it can beat basically everything, but it's not that consistent. So you always have the trade-off of consistency via power level. I mean, we are TCG players, we already know that. These are the top 8 archetypes, and I want to talk about them a little bit more. If you have memorized them, like Challengers, or for example, Amethyst Steel, Amethyst Blue, then we have Emerald Sapphire. We're sorry for switching up the names every time. We have Lemon Lime, we have Ruby Amethyst, we have Blue Steel, we have Amber Amethyst, and then we have Emerald Amethyst Aggro. And we want to see if these numbers and these like metagame shares are actually represented in real life tournaments. So let's have a look at the recent 2 big ones. For example, the DLC in Hong Kong with 443 players. And if we look at the archetypes, first place Dumbo, second place Dumbo. Then in the top 4, we have a Lemon Lime aggro. In the top 8, we also have Blue-Green Control, and Amethyst Steel Challengers. Well, every archetype represented in the top 8 is from the top 8 archetypes. Then again, we have Dumbo, Lantern, Dumbo, Lemon Lime aggro. The first one, not from the top 8 decks, is this Sapphire Steel Allies deck. Then we have Lantern again, and then Ramp and Challenges, Control, Lantern, Dumbo. So as you can see, the top 64 of this event basically only consists of the top 8 archetype, which means that Lorcana has a very stable metagame. You can say that. If you are going to a tournament, you can expect like 90 to 95% of the tournament players playing in the tournament are playing one of those archetypes. You can actually try to level the metagame if you know what the metagame consists of, and to just assume that it will consist of 95% of the top 8 archetypes, you are pretty well suited for this one. Let's check this one more time in the Lorcana CCQ in Warsaw. We have first place Lemon Lime aggro, second place Dumbo, Challengers, Lemon Lime aggro, Dumbo, Challengers, Control, Lantern, aggro, Control, Ramp, Challengers, Control. Then the first one, not in the top 8 archetypes, is in the top 64 allies again. Then we have Dumbo, Lantern, Control. So every single deck list we know from this tournament, except for one with the allies from BM Ross, is from the top 8 archetypes. So that basically means if we are heading into a new format, Winterspell has to tell us if the cards from Winterspell are powerful enough to generate new archetypes, or is it mostly that there will be new support for the already existing archetypes? But this will be just answered in another video where I will just show you my top 10 to 15 picks from the Winterspell release. Right now, I will just go over some sample deck lists from the current metagame. And we start over here in first place with Challengers and just walk down like I would say we look from the most played deck to the least played deck from the top 8. Starting over with this one here with Amethyst Steel Challengers. This is basically like a very stock list. people are not so sure which 1-drop to play. Like, numbers differ between Olaf, Rafiki. I mean, the only like known quantity basically is Captain Hook, which is played like always as a playset because it's a 1 mana or 1 ink or 1 cost creature or character that is actually attacking as a 3/2, which is kind of very good on rate. But other than that, you have, if you're playing more trinkety, you can play more Olafs. If you want to challenge like X3s, which have like 0 or 1 power, you will play more Rafikis. Only 1 Kaloon is kind of insane, I would assume, because if you're facing more aggro decks, I mean, this is a meta choice. If you're facing more aggro decks, you will play more Kaloon. We have, of course, Dog, Jafar, Cheshire Cat, one of the best Amethyst cards ever printed. You will see it in a lot of Amethyst deck because this is the one card like the whole combat like evolves around when there's character combat happening. Cheshire Cat basically opens a sub game. It's only about Cheshire Cat. Then we have Xanatos, Giant Crowbar, which has some burst damage because you can generate 2 lore out of nothing. Lexington is very good if you are playing against a lot of evasive creatures. And of course, the top end, I mean, Dumbo, Genie, Elsa, Hades, Pluto, Ursula, Demona. And we have 4 Strength of the Raging Fire, which is very, very usual. And 1, he heard his Thunderbolt. The numbers there vary between 1 and 3. I've seen all of this. You have to think about your runnings in this deck, of course, because you're playing at least some Kaloon, you're playing at least some Dogs. You also have, of course, 4 Genie, which is always a mainstay, and you don't want to overdo on Unings in this deck, but this is basically a very, very stock list. Some people are playing Pete, some people are not playing Pete. Pluto as a one-off is kind of spicy, but Hades, Demona, Ursula, this is very, very well known and stock and very good against aggro deck, as we already told you. So the next one is Blurple, one of my favorite decks. Yeah, it always evolves around the 2-drop ramp. This is a deck you need to have Tipu or Sail the Azurite Sea in your opening hand. If you're not having that, you're having a rough time. You need to play the 2-drop and then ramp onto your 4-drop plays, which are amazing. Either it's Dumbo, but usually you play Genie or Yago on turn 3. Yeah, you're accelerating. You have like 4 ink on turn 3, and Yago and Genie are super great plays. Then you have anti-aggro cards as, for example, Belle or Elsa. And then you close out the game with Demona, Hades, and the other Hades. You have great removal in the form of Into the Unknown. This is quite hard going on Junior Woodchuck Guidebook. I've never seen 4 copies in a deck, but I mean, if you value card draw, you can play these. The problem with Junior Woodchuck Guidebook, in my mind, is that you always have to keep in mind that you're playing Demona, and at some point you want to just spam out all your cards and play Demona and draw 3 new cards. So other card draw than Demona might not come in handy, because you already have so many cards in hand, and maybe Demona is only an advantage to your opponent. But other than that, this is a very great list. It's very good, as we already said, in the matchup matrix, basically against everything, as long as you hit the turn 2 ramp, which is very important for this deck. After that, we have the blue-green control deck, which always evolves around the shifting the Clarabelle. Then we have the 7-drop Clarabelle, shift 5, and it has the ability at the end of turn, if chosen opponent has more cards in their hand than you may draw cards until you have the same number, which is insane. You just basically play out all your cards pretty soon. You are ramping with Sail the Azurite Sea, with Cinderella, with Tipo. You're trying to get all your cards down, getting an ink advantage early in the game, and just drawing up so many cards with Clarabelle. It's an amazing engine. You also have some cards that actually feed into this. For example, your Welcome, which is a removal spell that actually removes everything you need to remove, and the opposing player draws 2 cards, which also comes in handy, because if they draw more cards, you will draw more cards with Clarabelle. So this is insane. Also, there's like the 1/2 one-sided 1/2 punch in the form of the one-sided Wrath with Malicious, Mean, and Scary and Prince Philip, which is also kind of amazing, because you usually sing Malicious, Mean, and Scary, put 1 damage on each of your opposing characters, like the characters from your opponent, and then you shift Prince Philip onto your small Prince Philip, and the Prince Philip says, swift and sure, when you play this character, banish all opposing damaged characters. And of course, you played Malicious, Mean, and Scary before, which means basically a one-sided Wrath. Everything from their side is gone. This is also very amazing, and it also makes a little bit of tension, because on the one hand, Your opponent always wants to drop all their cards onto the battlefield, because if they leave cards in hand, Clarabelle will draw them more cards. But if they go wide and put everything on the board, you will just wrath them. So it has problems against aggro deck, but other than that, this deck is also quite amazing. After that, we have like the Ruby Amethyst Evasive. It's called Evasive because a lot of your creatures actually have the ability of being evasive. For example, Dumbo, Genie, Yago. You have Elsa as well. You can give Ursula evasive, it is basically a mid-range deck, which functions similar to the Blurple deck. But the difference is that you don't have ramp. You have other, don't get me wrong, you have other great cards. You have better cards in the early game, like Tinkerbell, Diablo. You are way, way, way better against aggro deck. But if you're playing Ruby Amethyst into Blurple, you're always the underdog, because they will play the big spells faster than you. You have better matchups if you're playing against aggro, of course, because you have very good statted characters in the early game. But it doesn't help you against Blurple, for example. But other than that, the game plan is pretty much the same as is in Blurple. After that, we have the Lemon Lime aggro deck, which also won the CCQ in Warsaw, if I remember correctly. Yes, Tiana UTS won there. Well, Lemon Lime aggro, usually also called dogs, because you're playing a lot of ladies and tramps. This cuts down a little bit on those characters. I mean, you still play the 1-drop lady, the 1-drop lady, the 2-drop tramp, the 3-drop lady, the 5-drop lady, and the 7-drop tramp. But you can play more dogs. You can, if you want, you can play more dogs. What you just do is it's an aggro deck that bursts out a lot of creatures in the early game. I mean, you can play like, I don't know, 6 characters in the first 3 turns. Maybe not more, but 6 characters in the first 3 turns is not unusual for this deck, since you're playing 18 1-drops. There's a lot of potential of like flooding the board with creatures, and then playing a big tramp pretty cheap, because it costs 1 less for each character in play, so you can play tramp for free very early in the game. And of course, you can also shift lady onto another lady. For example, like if you play 1-drop lady, you can also play the shift lady, which costs 5 on turn 3, or even like early, because it has the shift ability. And then what is very, very important to this looks like a very like all-in aggro deck, but it actually has a one-sided sweeper as well. The Sing Together card, Under the Sea, is very important. It's not always played in those decks, but we can see as it is a 4-off here. Under the Sea is a card that says Sing Together 8, put all opposing characters with 2 attack or less on the bottom of their player's deck in any order. And amazingly, it's a song that can be sung together, which means if you play Trump for free, you have a 7-drop character on the board, and you only need 1 more 1-drop to play Under the Sea for free and banish, or like put all opposing characters away, basically. We are trying out some hate cards here as well. Ursula is in the deck to get rid of opposing songs. Mowgli is here to get rid of opposing actions. And then there's Tiana as well. It's another very good card against other aggro decks. So this is a very well-rounded deck, but it can also lose to, for example, the Challenger deck list. After that, we have the Blue Steel Ramp deck, which also just relies on turn 2 Tipu or Sail the Azurite Sea. This even plays 1 jump ahead as 1 more ramp spell here. The good thing this deck plays, instead of the Blurple deck we saw before, it has like kind of a sweeper with Spooky Side in the deck. But other than that, it's basically ramping and trying to play some amazing characters, for example, Big Tinkerbell, Goliath, Vincenzo Santorini, the Headless Horseman. But I would still assume that Blurple is just a better variant of this, because Blurple has more and better card draws. I mean, you still play the good cards from blue. Of course, you play Tipu, you play Sail, you play Hades, you play the ramp in 1 jump ahead, you have card selection with Develop Your Brain, and Cinderella is a powerhouse in this deck. But the steel cards don't work that well together with the blue cards. I would rather play all the cards where Amethyst has. I mean, this is still a good choice. You can play, if you like this color combination, you can still play it. But I don't see a lot of advantages to play this over the classic Blurple deck. Then we have this one here. This one is a Lantern deck, which is also very similar to the Blurple deck list, but it doesn't ramp in the sense that it has more resources to work with in your ink pile. It just ramps by playing the lantern. Lantern says you play one, like you can exert it, and the next minion, the next character you play costs 1 ink less to cast. So it's basically the same as if you would ramp, but the problem is it's uninkable and so on. So the draw to Amber, of course, in this deck is the Horseman Strikes. You play this action as a 4-off because it's great in the current meta. Draw a card, you may banish chosen character with evasive. And I mean, there's like a deck archetype which is called Ruby Amethyst Evasive. And usually all the good Amethyst cards have evasive. So a very big draw to Amber is, of course, the Horseman Strikes. And this actually here is like the combo deck. You are playing Monstro, the Great Illuminary, and we know the way. So the combo works like this. You have the Great Illuminary onto the battlefield, which says characters here gain exert, draw a card, while at the location. Monster says full breach, choose and discard a card, ready this character. He can't quest for the rest of the turn. So if you have Monstro at the location, the Great Illuminary, you can just exert him to draw a card, and then just discard a card to his own ability and make him ready again. So you can do this over and over and over and over and over again until you draw your whole library. So how do you win? The thing is, you can win with We Know the Way. We Know the Way says shuffle chosen card from your discard into your deck, reveal the top card of your deck. It would have the same name as the chosen card. You may play the revealed card for free, otherwise put it into your hand. So if you have We Know the Way in your discard pile, We Know the Way in your hand, you can just put it onto the deck, reveal it, it has the same name, put it into your hand, the other one goes into your discard pile. You can just cycle We Know the Ways over and over and over and over again. And you can also you can play it for free as long as you have a song. And also you can play it for free if it has the same name. So you can play infinite songs with this. You draw your whole library, you have We Know the Way in hand, you can put it into your discard pile, you can put it on top of a library, and you will sing infinite songs. Yeah, that's nice, but how do you win? Of course, we play Elena Dale. It's a 4-mana minion that says, whenever you play a song, gain 1 lore. So at some point, you will have played 20 We Know the Way, and this is sufficient to win the game. This is the combo piece, and I like this more, because there's actually, I would say, no advantage to play this over Blurple. But it depends. If you're like playing against a lot of mid-range deck, having a combo finish in your deck is actually a quite nice way of getting inevitability. Like, you will always win the late game because you have the combo in deck. I mean, it's dangerous because if Monstro is put into your ink, well, for example, you can't get to the combo. So there is like a bit of volatility here, but I think having the combo in your deck is the only way. Like, this configuration of the deck is the only way you play this over Blurple. And the last one I want to show you is, of course, the Degenerate Aggro deck Amethyst Emerald, which has, I don't know, 1,000 1-drops. We are playing 4, 8, 12, 16, 20, 24 1-drops. This is the most explosive deck ever. It also plays like cards, for example, Amethyst Chromicon. Tap, each player may draw a card. So you can just get over and over card draw over and over again. You play Gathering Knowledge and Wisdom, just a 2 ink card that gains you 2 lore. You play Enigmatic Inkcaster. Tap, if you play 2 or more cards this turn, gain 1 lore. This is so explosive. It will generate so much lore so early in the game. But also there's a lot of variance. I mean, you can draw all the uninks. There are a lot of uninks in this deck. You play 4 Merlin, 4 Scrooge McDuck, 4 Gathering with Knowledge and Wisdom, 4 Enigmatic Inkcaster. So there is, of course, 4 Cursed Murfolk. So there's a chance of breaking. But if you don't break, this deck is very degenerate. And it has, as we already saw, it has a very, very wide spread in the metagame matchups. So it has a 74% win rate against Blurple, but it only has a 10% matchup against Lemon Lime, for example. So this is like, I mean, you can choose. Do you rather play a deck that has like a 50% win rate against the whole metagame? Or do you play a deck that has like a 10% matchup in one matchup, and maybe a 75% matchup in the other one? You can choose that. So this is the current landscape of Lorcana. With Winterspell dropping soon, we are looking at new mechanics and powerful cards that seem specifically designed to counter exactly what we just looked at. I mean, I'm not sure if we will actually see a shift, but maybe there's the rise of something completely new. In my next video, I'll be doing a deep dive into the Winterspell spoilers and theory crafting the decks that could shatter the meta. Make sure you subscribe so don't miss the new tech. Until then, let me know in the comments which current deck do you think gets the biggest boost from Winterspell. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you in the next one.